Thank you, Jess, and thank you to CPWR for hosting the webinar today. We are very grateful for the partnership that we enjoy. So just by way of background, this webinar originated with the NIOSH, National Institute for Occupational Safety and Health, and their Construction Sector Council. Through this Construction Sector Council plan, the webinar began the National Stand Down to Prevent Struck-by Incidents, which this is part of, as we launch that today in our training. Unfortunately, as many of you may have heard, the NIOSH is undergoing significant changes, and those folks that were with us previously are no longer with us. So we are wishing them our best and hoping that they will be able to join us back again. So we appreciate CPWR for hosting the webinar. I am Brad Sant, the Senior Vice President of Safety and Education for the American Road and Transportation Builders Association. I'm glad to be so part of this national stand down to prevent struck-by incidents. You know, I was looking at some statistics today, and we've talked about for years the challenge that we have with falls in construction. And as I looked at the numbers, nearly 500 fall deaths last year. But I also looked at the BLS CPWR data this morning, and I look at when you add together transportation incidents, and that's typically not something that OSHA includes, but it's incidents where people are driving to and from work or driving from job site to job site, transportation incidents that are work related, and you combine them with struck by or coming in contact with an object, it's almost as much as falls. So this is a very important topic and something that we all want to pay attention to. And so since we are tied now, as you see in Travis's background, with National Work Zone Awareness Week and the stand down, we kind of joined at the hip there because of the number of the struck by fatalities that happen in our construction zones on the roadways. So very important. And we have tied those together for this stand down today. So I would like to introduce you to our panelists because it works very well with the Work Zone Awareness Week, because we're talking about technologies that are now available and being used that will help both workers and motorists avoid struck-by incidents in work zones. So you'll see our panelists today. We have a big panel, but it's a very interesting presentation. So what we're going to do today, we're going to talk to 3 different companies and representatives of those companies that have technologies that help either warn motorists and warn workers about vehicles that are not behaving properly, or have technologies that just simply keep the workers off the road and have stepped in to fill in some of those duties so we can have the workers on the side or off the site. So we're going to begin today with hearing from Tom Parbs. Tom is with HAAS Alert, and he's for 22 years, he's dedicated to solving organizational challenges and partnering closely with roadway agencies to tackle critical roadway safety issues. By addressing preventable collisions and struck-by incidents, his efforts have spanned across numerous organizations, from small enterprises to large corporations. He's currently serving as Vice President of Sales with HAAS Alert. And Tom is a road safety advocate and helps drive the adoption of HAAS Alert Safety Cloud advanced warning, digital alerting technology. A user of that technology that's going to be with him is Haley Norman. She is the co-owner and the integrator at Direct Traffic Control. That's a family-owned highway safety company in Oklahoma, very known in that area for their temporary traffic control work. She also serves as the chair-elect for the American Traffic Safety Services Association, ATSA, who's very now involved in soldiering Work Zone Awareness Week. So very good to have Haley with us here today. Following them, we're going to hear from Todd Hartnett. He's with Vermac, and Todd brings over 21 years of experience in the smart work zone industry, specializing in business development, market creation, and distribution channel strategy. As the Director of Business Development at Vermac, Todd is focused on expanding the company's market presence across North America. That's US and Canada. His expertise includes working closely with state departments of transportation, engineering firms, and technology partners to implement innovative traffic management solutions and enhance safety and efficiency in work zones. And he is partnered with Jim Weston with the Washington State Department of Transportation. Jim Weston began service with WashDOT in 1990. Much of his work included conducting field experiments, forensics, construction-related research to enhance service life, and the implementation of new technologies specific to pavements. Since January 2019, Jim has worked as roadway operations manager for the Washington State DOT in their headquarters of Maintenance and Operations Division. His work includes roadway, bridge, and roadway safety features and delineation. He is active in asset management, risk management, and transportation system management operations, where he provides a roadway operations perspective. And he is with other members in helping to advance the connected work zone technologies for Washington DOT's maintenance personnel. And our next set, we have Michael Gallant of HaulHub Technologies. Mike is a seasoned professional and technology startup, or is a seasoned political and technology startup professional with extensive experience in legislative strategy, political campaigns, and technology startups. He has advised candidates and elected officials at all levels and currently serves as the Director of Industry Relations and Government Affairs at HaulHub Technologies. In this role, he helps lead the digital construction revolution through integrated resilient technologies. Great to have Mike with us. And he's partnered now with Mark Buckaloo with the Delaware Department of Transportation. And Mark is the Deputy Director of Operations. He has been in the construction industry for over 25 years, which is a field that he is passionate about. He started this industry as a laborer, and he worked up to a project manager on complex construction projects while pursuing his bachelor's degree at night. And so it really made him appreciate every aspect of the industry and every person, to respect them who is responsible for the success of a project. Currently, the construction industry is perhaps lagging or perceived as lagging other industries with new technologies, and he wants to change all that. That will create a safer workplace, automate our processes, and improve the lives of people working in the construction industry. So we're going to hear first from those six and have a question and answer, and then we're very lucky to have Travis Parsons, who will be here to wrap us up. And Travis is the Director of Occupational Safety and Health with the Laborers Health and Safety Fund of North America. I've known Travis for many, many years. I think with 25 years of experience, I think I've known him the whole time in industrial hygiene and safety. He offers a wide range of safety and health services to the affiliates of the Laborers International Union of North America. Notably, Travis chairs the ANSI ASSP A1047 committee, which oversees that ANSI standard on work zone safety for road construction. Additionally, he serves as the Vice President for the Labor Division of the National Safety Council and Vice Chair of the ANSI A10 Committee. So we welcome all these very well-renowned national leaders with us today, and we're going ahead and get started. So Tom, why don't you kick us off this afternoon?
Thank you very much for that introduction, Brad, and thank you to my fellow panelists. We're looking forward to a really, really great conversation, and we're really grateful that everybody's here and we can talk about such an important topic. So, Brad, if you don't mind, as I share my screen, I want to make sure, just for a little bit of housekeeping, everybody can see the stewardship for safety slide that I'm on for today. Can we see that with those pillars of safety?
It's good.
Awesome. So what I want to talk about today really is the biggest focus when we talk about work zone safety is protecting employees and saving lives, fostering the health and wellness of our employees and our crews that are out there working the roadway. And ultimately, right, I think we can all agree that the ultimate goal would be to build safer roads and stronger communities. As Brad mentioned, my name is Tom Parbs. I'm the Vice President here at HAAS Alert. And again, very, very grateful for that warm welcome and introduction, Brad. But, you know, as I talk through this for a few minutes, my goal for everybody that's listening, whether here live or on the recording, is how can we think differently? Brad had mentioned often our industry may be a little bit behind the curve. We tend to take a very traditional approach when it comes to road safety and saving lives. But if we really think differently about Vision Zero, what I'm going to focus on today is, you know, these crashes are preventable. I mean, they're called preventable crashes because they can be prevented. But we can't think traditionally. We have to think differently if we're going to save lives and make sure, right, everybody goes home safer to their families. So I'm going to focus around taking a systems approach, taking the traditional things that we've been utilizing and using innovative and revolutionary technology that is saving lives, but we must integrate human failing. And I always preface before I get started, when I talk about human failure, the little data for you, NHTSA, the data from NHTSA is that 94% of crashes that take place on the roadway today are due to human failure. So often it's not us, right, that are training very rigorously. We have amazing roadside tools. We have amazing processes in our business. Often it becomes the failure of the motoring traffic, right? The folks that are just going to and from work or wherever they're going, right? They're not training daily. They're not using the same tools. They're just out and about on the roadway, and they're really not aware of us. And this has been a problem that has been impacting us for quite some time, to the tune of a nearly $1.9 trillion economic problem here in the United States. And while 2024, we saw slightly less crashes, according to NHTSA, I think it was about 38,000. We're still way above the highs from 2019. And so, you know, we're going to focus specifically on work zone, right? And this is whether you're in utility, whether it's you're in traffic control, whether it's long-term road building, whether it's short-term work zones, mobile work zones. It's the most at-risk, vulnerable road user. And while we have amazing laws, and most folks know that we have slow down and move over laws, I think the data shows that there is a crash every 5.4 minutes in a work zone in the United States of America. Every 5.4 minutes, there's a crash. And that means with the estimated 115,000 work zone crashes, there's an average of 315 a day, 110 injuries a day, and unfortunately 3 deaths every day on our roadway. And so, you know, we want to make sure that we can think differently. So if people aren't aware of this, if they're not paying attention to us, right? If they are utilizing their, pardon me for that, if they are, excuse me. Sorry, I'm traveling today and my phone is ringing in the hotel room. But if they're talking on the telephone, right, the equivalent of driving drunk. If they are drowsy, the equivalent of driving drunk. If they are listening to the radio, they've got passengers. How are we disrupting that? We're all in soundproof cocoons. So what we posit, right, with the use of Safety Cloud is you can now, using technology, combining it with the lights and the cones and the signs and the arrow boards, things that people need to be aware of. How can we reach into that vehicle, disrupt that distraction, disrupt that dumb driving, disrupt all of that drowsiness, and make them aware of us before they get to us? And that's where, with Safety Cloud, you know, we suggest the utilization of our advanced warning notifications. To summarize, digital alerts, sending alerts through people's phones, through their infotainment systems, natively through the car itself. You know, as the world's largest and most trusted V2X agency, right, we have found that if you reach into the vehicle and you make them aware, right, use the common stuff they're using, use their Waze, use their infotainment system, right, through like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto, Ford Sync, right, use Apple Maps, just all the common everyday things that folks are using, even if they're not navigating, just reach in and give them that advanced warning. Hey, watch out, construction ahead, watch out, lane is blocked, watch out, wrong way driver, right? What's the hazard they're going to encounter? Reach natively into those vehicles, like, you know, the compatible 2018 and newer models of Chrysler Fiat, right? The compatible models of model year 24 and 25 and newer of all those Volkswagen vehicles. Like, meet the motoring traffic where they're at, disrupt that phone call, disrupt that radio, disrupt that conversation, or the shaving or eating food or the dozing off. And, you know, many of you probably can tell us, you know, some even more interesting stories that you've heard. But if you can reach into that vehicle and get that digital alert into the car, through their phone, through the car itself, and warn them, make them aware 20 to 30 seconds in advance on a high-speed road, that's a half mile of time and distance that they can actually like slow down and move over. City street, it might be a couple blocks, or sorry, it might be a 1/10 of a mile. A residential street where it's still dangerous, it's probably going to be a couple blocks. But if you give people that time and space, that 20 to 30 seconds, you make them aware, so they can see your lights and your cones and your tapers and your crews and your pavers and your TMAs. If you make them aware, what you're actually going to be able to do is start reducing the risk that the crash takes place by as much as 90%. Proven when you add digital alerting, right, as in a safe systems approach, make them aware before they get to us, and ultimately right, you're able to reduce significantly the risk that crash takes place. Those hard braking incidents, right, that lead to the secondary collisions or the motorist on motorist, where we're still at fault, right, because that's that duty to public safety in the right of ways. We can reduce those hard braking incidents by at least 80% or more. You can reduce speeds by at least 25% or more within the first second of those alerts going out when used in conjunction with all the amazing tools that you're using today. Combine the traditional with thinking differently, and we can get people to slow down and move over. And again, proven that 97% of motorists are reporting to slow down and move over if you make them aware where they are in their car before they get to you, so they can take the appropriate action. So just going to stop here. Again, really appreciate the opportunity to share this. Again, my goal is everyone thinks differently so we can build safer roads and stronger communities. Thank you, Brad.
Thank you, Tom. All right. Haley, talk to us.
Yeah. Thank you, Tom, so much. I always enjoy getting to see the updated data as we've kind of gone along and followed this technology. And it's so encouraging to see those numbers back up what our team is feeling and experiencing on the roadway. And so, again, Brad, thank you for the introduction. My family owns a highway safety company in Oklahoma. We do temporary traffic control. We install guardrail, pavement markings, and signs all across the state. And we've been doing that for about 25 years. And our team is currently about 130. And so we have had Safety Cloud installed for just about a year, but fully for about 6 or so months. And during the last year, just so I can give you a little bit of big numbers that mean a lot to us. So 130 people working across the state in our roadways every day, just here in Oklahoma from our company alone. We have sent out 1.6 million alerts to drivers to protect our crews just in that amount of time. And so if you think about the reach of the impact as we continue to implement these types of technologies, seeing that 97% of drivers are saying that, hey, when I got that alert, I really did react differently. We can really make a difference here in bringing down our roadway crashes and specifically those injuries and deaths. And so we delivered just over 197,000 alerts just last month. So it is definitely work zone season, and it is a great time for us to be having this conversation and then to be sharing it out with others. And so we utilize both the Safety Cloud on our moving operation vehicles when they're actually in the work zones and their lights are activated, then the alerts are making their ways into our drivers' vehicles. And then we also utilize the lane closure feature, which is where we can, on a map, draw a lane closure for its duration, whether it's short or long. That can also be alerting drivers during that time frame for that lane closure. And so a lot of general contractors are very excited about that side of the technology, as they may be there on site, for extended periods of time as we're redoing a long stretch of road or building a new bridge that is going to have extended lane closures. And so the thing that I just really want to touch on is how excited I am about seeing this technology in our company, which might seem very small to a lot of people across the nation, but each and every one of those 130 of our team members, they are a father or a mother, a sister, a brother. They are a family. And so by utilizing these types of technologies alongside the long proven roadside devices that we have, like barriers and cones, we are saving those lives, and we are making safer communities and stronger communities, because we are not losing our workers and having to deal with what happens when a family loses a loved one just because of distracted or distracted driving. And so I want to say thank you again for you guys giving us the platform to talk about these important technologies, and just very thankful for the way that we're seeing our team feel excited and safer when we remind them that as they flip their lights on they are now telling the cars that come into their workplace, their work zones out on the roads, to watch out for them, that they are there. And so thank you again for that, and look forward to hearing from the rest of the panel.
Thank you so much, Haley and Tom. And I am very much looking forward to the Q&A session, because I definitely want to hear some Q&A about how those, what the workers see and how that works on both ends. We talked a little bit about the car notifications, but how's that working on both sides? So excited for that. Thank you so much. All right, now we're very happy to hear from Todd with Vermac and the work they've been doing for quite some time in this area. So take it away, Todd.
Yeah, hey guys, good afternoon. Like Tom, I'm on the road sitting in a hotel in downtown Los Angeles. So we may hear some gunshots or the homeless lady arguing with the invisible man downstairs. So if we do get any of that in the background, I apologize in advance. So let me pull up presentation. All right, so our piece today is just going to be brief on our connected worker product. At the end of the slide, I do have an opportunity for you to connect directly with us and me to gain additional information on this product. But this particular product is pretty much the equivalent of a cell phone size-wise. It is a connected worker module. And the goal of this device is very similar to what Tom and Haley, presented on is really the goal of zero death and protecting workers within each of the work zone environments. So the biggest thing is fighting that distraction and apathy of the motorist. So, what is a smart and connected or digital work zone? Historically, I'm not sure what the audience is. It looks like we've got a pretty good turnout, about 350 people. But Smart Work Zone, just so you're aware, is the historical. That is more or less the logic being integrated into a Smart Work Zone concept. And now we're moving more towards the connected piece, where we're looking to connect every device. And HAAS being the intro was nice, because HAAS is a historical partner of ours, but on our side of the fence, we are more on the infrastructure side. So we've got the devices that you see here. So a perfect example of a connected work zone, you have a start, the beginning location of that work zone that we can disseminate via digitally. You've got the ability to plug in DSL, the automation of speed when there is an actual worker present. You have the connected arrow board, which is obviously the go-to line item on most statewide opportunities now. That gives us the overall statewide footprint of where your lane closures are and where they begin and end. We do have the ability to provide DSL in conjunction with speed feedback, which would be the speed wizard. And then, of course, the connected worker piece. And then, of course, tapping off the end of work zone location. All of that information, we've got various partners. We're supplying that via WZDX. We're disseminating directly to Waze with those construction alerts of worker ahead. Of course, APIs created specifically for DOT, so they can ingest all of that data as well. And this is the actual module. As I said, it's about the size of the palm of your hand or a cell phone.
We're not seeing your slides. Did you hit share?
Oh, shoot. I'm sorry.
Sorry, I didn't speak up sooner. I didn't realize you were supposed to be sharing.
I apologize. Where is the share?
There should be a green share button at the bottom of the screen, or I can pull them up if you tell me which slide you're on.
Oh, shoot. I apologize. I'm normally on Teams. So.
Yeah.
Well, darn. Now I got to go back to the beginning. I guess I should have asked. Nobody said anything. All right.
My apologies.
Slides now.
Yes.
All right. So here we go. Worker presence. I'm not going to reintroduce, but here's the slide that I was just speaking to. So we've got the beginning of the work zone, the DSL, the connected arrow board, the speed wizard, speed feedback, and then the actual worker present piece. And then, of course, the end of the speed feedback. And then this was the actual module that I was referencing. Essentially the size of a cell phone, goes in your worker's vest. We're tracking that, 24/7 at all times, but the ultimate goal is to eventually get that into increasing that awareness, right? So we want to get it into the navigation apps and the infotainment systems. And what can we use that in conjunction with, right? So one of the easiest things that would be the easiest to put in place in every state across the U.S. is the typical message board. Just the minute that we have an active or worker presence environment, we're disseminating that information to that portable message sign. The worker presence trailer that's literally to the immediate right of the message board. So the state of Maryland is the first to actually write a specification that requires a worker presence trailer. And this will be required on all work zones across the state of Maryland. And all of this can be done, in an automated fashion. So similar to the next product in line, the speed limit, you've got a digital version of the speed limit and then your speed feedback sign below that. So then you have the ability to automate that speed as well as provide that speed feedback information. And again, all of this information can be fed into those apps and infotainment systems. We have partnerships in place to accomplish that. So the beauty of it, so what I'd like you to picture is a static speed limit sign that when you have a work zone environment, you're historically just covering that sign, which would be our red dot below, manually covering versus uncovering those signs when workers are present or an active work zone is currently present. So moving from manual covering of that particular sign to remotely changing speed limit based on work schedule. As you can see, the automation and the accuracy are literally directly correlated on a path up, up, and up. And then automating that, which is something that we're doing test pilots right now. And Jim from WSDOT will speak directly to that here in a couple minutes. But we have multiple pilot projects going out, Washington, Wisconsin. We've got a few projects that are earmarked in Massachusetts and Tennessee and Pennsylvania. So these are all states that are moving in this direction. And the goal is to automate as much as possible to trigger that worker being present into a reduced speed environment coming into and through that work zone. So as you see here to the right, the automation boosted the accuracy from 1% to 90%, which is huge. And the result, obviously, you're ensuring a safer condition-based speed when workers are present. So the key takeaways: connect workers to the rest of your connected work zone, lower the speed limit only when and where needed based on worker presence, increase compliance to speed displays and save time through automation, alert drivers of worker presence as they enter the work zone, and then, of course, send notifications to Waze and other navigational apps. And we do have relationships with a lot of those crowdsourced data partners, so we can disseminate that to as many, in-vehicle partners as are currently possibly available. So the QR code there actually redirects you to a link that will be helpful in getting more information for our connected worker. I would like to comment that we use the connected worker with our new digital product, which is WorkZone Live, which will be a digital twin creation of a connected work zone, to where we'll not only be monitoring connected arrow boards now, but also connected static signs. So feel free to grab your cell phone and camera and screenshot that, and any additional information, we're happy to provide that with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Todd, for that. Travis and I will remember sitting around tables 20 years ago, dreaming of the day that such things would be available. And it's really exciting to see this coming out. So Jim, let's hear from you in Washington. I know Washington DOT has been a leader in trying to implement these new technologies, test them out, see if they work. So Jim, let's hear what your experience is with these.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate this opportunity, Brad. Todd, thanks for that intro on kind of what we're doing with the personal side of the house. Obviously, as the digital alerting piece was mentioned earlier, and particularly the roadway worker safety, that's really where this hits the road from our agency standpoint. We're doing a lot, and I'll give a quick shout out to our state ITS operations engineer, Tony Langang. I think many of you might be familiar with him. Steve Hopla is our traffic operations transportation technical engineer with all of our safety programs. And then one particular shout out goes to our MAP team, who Bruce Castile runs that. They're a group of 6 individuals that hit our state each year annually, hit all of our routes, looking at assessing our routes. But they're kind of the test bed for what we've been doing. We were kind of got together in a conversation with Vermac a couple years ago and asked about potentially piloting a project to kind of talk about what we're doing. So I work with our transportation system management and operation team, and have been doing that for a few years, and we're moving pretty fast with connected work zones and smart work zones. But the discussion that always comes up, which really hits the road with maintenance and operations, is, you know, how do these work zone, where does maintenance fit into this? We can, you know, for instance, plan a lot of work zone activities, and just statistically, or some numbers to throw out there, we had roughly 200 construction work zones last year, with nearly 750 maintenance work zones. So a different type of work zone, and these were all planned. So there's a big number difference there between a construction work zone and a maintenance work zone, even though both were planned. And then when we talk about unplanned work zones, then those numbers really grow quickly. You're talking about picking up different debris on the road. One type of debris were well over 2,000 phone calls on, hey, you need to get out there for this unplanned work zone. And so those aren't even captured in when we talk about work zones. So it's an unplanned work zone, unscheduled, just roll up on it, got to take care of it and address it right now. And how do you do that safely? And how does this information get out in real time? So with that as maybe in the back of the mind, this is what we did as we moved forward, kind of talked and said, hey, how can we quickly identify the beginning of a work zone, whether it's a vehicle that just turns on its flashing lights, or a sign that is posted and says, here's the beginning of the work zone. And then maybe the third piece that a lot of people within maybe this industry talk about is where's the person. So where does the work zone begin? Where's the equipment? Where's it active? Let's just say, where's the work zone active? And then where are the people within that active work zone? Are they at the beginning of the active work zone, or are they farther down the line? So we use this kind of idea to say, what can be done, and fortunately we've been able to move forward with this. We really were looking at, you know, where are these work zones? If we map them and work with you at locating where they're going to be, how accurate can this information be rolled out? So a lot of this was done in a digital twin background. It was showing not in real time out on any kind of a web application, but in the background, what kind of accuracy do we have? So we roughly had, when we got started last year, roughly around 250 work zones remaining. The MAP team went out, worked weekly with the Vermac team on accuracy. They found, hey, we're about 50% accurate over the first couple of weeks. The last few weeks, they increased that accuracy. And by the end of this little trial last summer, we're at about 90% accuracy. I think it was 86%, but moving in the right direction. We're going to pilot this again this year. And we're going to be rolling that out earlier this year. So overall, we have roughly 600 work zones. They are somewhat planned, but our main intent is to show if this is where we're planning to be, when is it real? When does it become active, like now, or is there latency there? And then where's the equipment and where are the people? And we want to be able to do that and refine that process and get better accuracy. We believe, based on conversations with others, that it's going to be much higher than 90% potentially. And if that's the case, we'd like to roll that out to some of the different applications that are out there to let people know how accurate it is. And with that, we can talk, maybe answer some questions here in a little bit, but I want to make sure to give Mike and Mark some time to talk about what they're doing and then answer questions. I think that'll come up from this collective conversation. And with that, I'll hand it back over and appreciate your time. Thanks.
Thank you so much. And very interested to see, Jim, how this continues to progress with Washington. All right, now we're very pleased to hear from Michael Gallant with HaulHub Technologies and some of the innovative things they are doing to both protect workers and to automate services. So take it away, Mike.
Thank you, Brad. Thank you to ARTBA for the invitation this afternoon, and thank you to Jess and CPWR for hosting this important discussion today as we talk about the broader National Work Zone Safety Awareness Week and what we're doing to help protect workers on the job site. I'm going to quickly pull up a few slides here. Can everyone see my screen?
Yes.
Great. So EDOT's the platform that we offer. It's something that we work with state departments of transportation all over the country. We already heard the bio from my background. We don't need to recover that again, but HaulHub is a startup. We focused on construction technology at our very base level and try and help drive efficiency and safety through this digital transformation. As both Tom and Todd talked about, it's there's so much information widely available on these construction job sites. How can we make sure that these inspectors that are doing this work, their contractor partners that are delivering that material, can be safer by leveraging the interoperability of that data? And the entry point for that for us starts with e-ticketing. Some of you may be familiar with these screens on the left-hand side down below, those tickets stacked up high on a desk or shared in a warehouse in a box somewhere on in your DOT operations or on your grounds. That information has a wealth of data that is hugely valuable to revitalizing or building new roads and bridges throughout our transportation network. And what we do is digitize it, that picture that you're seeing on the right-hand side, taking those fields for asphalt, concrete, aggregates, etc., putting it in the inspector's hands for material delivery and inspection practices. And as we aggregate it, and as we've started moving down this path, you can see here that the adoption nationwide has been pretty swift since 2020. Delaware, and Mark, who will speak after me, was our first state, and they've been kind of our research and development partner in this effort as we start to digitize the nation's construction material data. And I want to bring everyone to this slide here. This is a drone flyover of a job site that takes place in Delaware and was the first ever connected construction project job site that we ever did. And as we were moving down this material inspection path, Delaware had asked us, is there ways you can incorporate the machines as well? Because that has important data components to it too. And you're seeing that manifestation right here on the screen, tying in the location of that paver, the location of that roller. And all of that information is very data rich. And what we found out is we can end up serving that information through the consumer mapping systems like Waze, as it was mentioned before, or to the Work Zone Safety Data Exchange that Federal Highway runs to inform the traveling public of worker presence, of active construction as they go about their daily tasks to work, driving their kids to and from school. But importantly, as was mentioned earlier, that they have actionable real-time information on their phone, in their car GPS system, to be able to inform them, hey, let's please slow down as they approach these work zones. This is a critical safety measure. E-ticketing is where we start. Those workers having to collect those paper tickets in the field are a huge pain point, and then critically a very safety conscious feature being deployed in the field. And then layering all this information on top of it really is a redundant data set that can be leveraged in real time across all job sites across the state, and of course, any of those states we're working with across the country. So I'm excited for the discussion today, and I'm going to leave this slide up and hand it over to Mark, who will be able to talk more about their perspective from DelDOT.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Michael. Well done. So we first started our partnership with HaulHub, talking about e-tickets and talking with our material suppliers. They kind of wanted to kill me because, we're a big government. I'm trying to, spy on the private industry, and I assure you I'm not. I just want to get the same paper ticket, but in an electronic process instead. What was like a difficult conversation, now we're trying to move into more pulling equipment data, pushing that information out to road users through Waze, through the mapping applications that are out there for road users. It's sort of been a huge turn of events for us because the contractors are now coming out of the woodwork. They want to work with us. They want to partner with us. They see that the opportunities that are there. There's a lot of growth in this space that I can see in the construction industry with connected equipment and pushing information out to road users. It's been a symbiotic relationship between us and the contractors. And this isn't just about what Delaware DOT can gain out of this. What can we do to improve our efficiencies? It's been about how can we help contractors become more efficient? How can we help contractors to help their workers be more safe? By pushing that information out to road users. The gentleman from HAAS did a tremendous job presenting on all that. I don't want to duplicate everything he said, but what we're seeing is we can kind of take pieces of information from each piece of equipment we have. We have Bluetooth readers, so we know what our traffic counts are. We know when we have delays in the work zone. We could push out catered messages to road users. We could push out catered messages out to message boards, just to give people who are about to drive into the work zone just an idea of what to expect. For me, it's about preparing those road users as they're driving down the road, what to expect. I think most people want to do what's right and what's good. So when you could tell people that there's an active work zone, that there's workers present, I think a lot of what we're seeing is a drop in speed by the traveling public going through our work zones because of these notifications. It's been a real great learning experience for us. And again, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We've partnered with a lot of states, Iowa, Louisiana, just to name a few, and they've been tremendous partners with us. Just everyone going out their own way, figuring things out, and see what they can get out of connected equipment. We're also seeing a lot of benefits through the asset management piece. Talk about e-construction, digital plans, all these things. Everything is linked, and that's what kind of people starting to see. Like everything is linked, and everything we do here can have a benefit down the road for benefit for another section. And this is just a tremendous opportunity. It's a tremendous time to be in the construction industry. I'm excited and appreciate everyone that's presented on this. It's been informational for me as well. And thank you, ARTBA, tremendous organization. I love ARTBA.
Thanks, Mark. I did not pay him to say that, but
No, he did not.
Thank you so much for joining us. And now it's our time to ask our presenters some questions based on what they have presented here. We would like you to do that in the Q&A box. We'll be monitoring that and providing some questions. We also gave our presenters, I'm sorry, Sol, I will slow down. Our presenters or our participants a chance to post questions ahead of time for our presenters. So Travis and I are going to kind of partner here as we go through the questions to ask some of these, but I'm going to take what I'm really interested in. I think we kind of intuitively understand how using some of these technologies that motorists are going to get notified of an active work zone through their Waze systems, their native navigation systems, whatever it may be. Talk to us a little bit about how workers can get informed about and what they're hearing, what they see about traffic. And maybe we could start out on that question with Todd, because you have the device they wear in their pocket, but I think others have that as well. And Todd, would you mind just starting that, and then anybody else that wants to jump in? What are workers? What do they see and hear? What are they being told as you're alerting them?
So on the connected worker module that we've created, it's to track the worker. We're not sending two-way communication to the worker. The goal of that is to automate speeds and change that active versus inactive work zone environment, i.e. the worker presence trailer. So the thought is the minute a worker becomes present, technically you now have an active environment. Now we're going to disseminate that message and info upstream to alert conditions ahead, more or less.
Excellent. Okay, so that's just telling whether it's a changeable message board, whatever it may be that's connected. It's as soon as that worker comes present, that device or technology is being alerted so that it can warn the motorists.
Correct.
Good. Tom, Michael, anything else that you want to add to this?
Yeah, I think, from Todd's perspective, we're kind of approaching it from a different angle, right? Using that material delivery information and then activity in our app where an inspector is confirming the load being delivered, and then the activity of those machines in concert with one another in advance of that job site being notified to the traveling public that it's active, a number of key indicators layered into it. A ticket being printed at the plant where we know that truck is going to that job site, the activity, the machine present, that paver, roller, miller, whatever, being turned on, all are factors to determine worker presence. And those in concert with one another will then broadcast worker notifications to the traveling public.
Good. Tom, you want to wrap us up with that one?
Yeah. So, we take the approach, and I want to be very, very clear. Todd, Michael, they're all talking the very, very right things. I mean, obviously, when our people, right, our human assets are inside of that work zone, it's a critical time to make sure that motorists can pass by safely. Our people are safe, they're safe, right? Everybody is safer. That's a big win-win. But we know all too well, right? Many of you may know the tragedy that took place on I-695 just north of Baltimore back on March of 2023. Unfortunately, right, two distracted drivers speeding through that work zone, one clipped the other through the Jersey barrier, killed 6 people instantly on that job site. I happen to work very closely with that company now after the fact. So we just, again, thinking differently, it's not so much, I don't want us to just walk away from this thinking, how do we warn people before they get to the work zone? Because you have to, because traffic patterns might change. Obviously, there's people that are working. It could even be there's nobody in the work zone and traffic patterns are still changing. So you still have to make sure that there's safe travel in those ROWs. But we take it from the approach of, if you're going to warn them before they enter the work zone, what about while they're in the work zone, right? You've got points of ingress and egress, right, Michael, right? You've got big pieces of iron that are bringing equipment and material in and out. You've got workers that are there. You've got paving, you've got stripe work, you've got mill work that's happening. Where are the human assets? And that's really what Safety Cloud, right? HAAS Alert, where we really focus on, and working with partners like Vermac and obviously the airboard manufacturers and the message board manufacturers, letting people know you're entering that work zone so they have the time and space to slow down and start paying attention. But once they're in the work zone, where are the people? 100% ground truth live while that work is moving or stopped. Protect against, right, the moving hazards as well as those stopped hazards, so our people can work safe and the motorists can be safe, and that means everybody goes home to their family safer.
Wonderful. Do any of our users have any comments they want to make on this before we move to our next question?
Yeah, I might comment real quick on that. That's a great point, is that it's the latency piece, right? If there's a work zone, is it active at all? And that's what I think a lot of people get caught up in, is there's a work zone ahead, but nothing's happening. Or even our messaging within our own agency will put out information that says we have a work zone that begins at 9 and is closed till like 5 a.m. But the worker presence might be 7, where they're setting up traffic control right there. And there's a difference. And that's probably the key right there is what's happening, is the information real, and creditable. But yeah, I'll just kind of leave it with that. That's kind of what drove our piece, because if it's an unplanned work zone, that's one thing. Even if it's a planned work zone, if somebody's there, where are they and what's happening?
Thank you, Mark.
Jim's right. I mean, you talk about how many times have you driven down the road at 7 o'clock at night and they left a flagger ahead sign up, right? And there's no flagger when you get up there, right? So we're creating this sort of, we're lying to the public, and the public's like loses trust that's accurate. So really for us, it's about like something that's going on in the work zone is triggering that there's an active work zone. What we didn't want to do is make something that's a logistical nightmare for people in the work zones. I don't want them to have to do any extra work digitally to kind of set up the work zone, to tell people what the lane closure is. Like, it becomes a logistical nightmare for us day after day. Like, is there left lane closed, right lane closed, lane shift? Because our construction zones are very dynamic. And we really wanted to set this thing up that, hey, if there's active presence, we're going to tell you there's active presence in there. And that's really what we really want, that proof positive for the data that we're pushing out to the public, because we don't want it to be like a flag or a head sign where we're lying to the public and then they lose faith in what they're seeing and what they're hearing. The other piece is I think our industry or our road users are sort of inundated with signs. So we have to get inside these vehicles and tell them what's going on. And that really helps us tell that story. Same thing with message boards. Message boards have much more greater impact to our road users than a static sign that's out there.
Thank you, Mark. Travis, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, I'm going to jump in with a question here. Thank you, Brad, and thank you for everybody that's taking the time to be here today. I'm going to ask the next question, and this is really key. I've learned across the country. Every state's a little different with the state DOTs. So what can state DOTs do to assist with this worker safety and the traveling public safety? How can we work with them? And as there's probably a lot of contractors on this call right now or this webinar. How does a contractor establish a relationship with their state DOTs to help protect workers? I'll start with Tom.
Thanks, Travis. So, everything that I spoke about during my portion of the presentation, to be very clear, is codified into federal law. And most of us know, and we've been on Capitol Hill, many of us, as we look at extending the funding that was available during the Infrastructure and Investment Jobs Act, or IJA, as we formerly known. So the Protecting Roadside Workers Act, or Responders Act, was passed into law with IJA, which codified digital alerting, which I spoke about, into federal law, which GHSA actually assigned that 405H designation specifically for preventing roadside deaths. So you'll see about 65-ish or so of the state DOTs, the State Highway Safety Office, if digital alerting is written into your highway safety plan, it's a formulaic approach to the millions of dollars that are available every year, right? Each state gets kind of their piece of the pie. If that makes sense, I'll speak specifically to Washington State. We've been working with them closely. Their traffic safety committee actually got, sorry, Saul, the Washington Traffic Safety Committee got their portion, right? And they were then able to Washington State Patrol and to many of the fire departments and emergency vehicles and even some of the, state DOT operations that they're doing. So that money doesn't necessarily trickle down to the private side. So what we have found in states like Tennessee or Minnesota or in some of these other states, just as an example, where the contractors, whether you're GC or a subcontractor, you can then go to the state and say, you should spec this, like you should require this, you should spec this into the bid, kind of like they're doing with connected aero boards and the work zone data exchange feeds, right, that we support. And so that's how those funds really can, if it's in the bid, then you can bid for it, and it's a part of the work that's happening. So, but it's really the togetherness. Working with Haley, and for as long as we've been working together, she's not waiting for it to be spec'd. The safety of her employees and the uniqueness to be, I have something these other contractors will have. I can make a safer work zone, puts her in a great advantageous position. But we find many folks, I mean, there's 5,000 agencies that are utilizing this, from the federal, the state, down to the local government, and even to privatized private companies. They're not waiting to be safer. But our biggest thing has been, it's codified. There's money there. The states can get it. And if we request that it's spec'd in, it'd be a lot easier to make sure, at least from a digital alerting standpoint, more people are safety with that technology. I hope that helps.
Oh yeah, definitely very helpful. And anybody else from any other technologies want to jump in here next?
Sure. Happy to expand on that. So e-ticketing, like I mentioned, I showed the map in my slides. All of those states right now are in some shape or form deploying e-ticketing. Delaware is certainly more advanced, and Mark mentioned Iowa, Louisiana, and Nebraska. Those are 4 states that are participating in a federal grant to leverage this information for work zone safety. But any state can really do this. Any material can do this as well. Now, the level of deployment for each one of them might be in, different stages of maturity, but ultimately, the more robust your e-ticketing feeds are, those producers creating that material, those contractors putting that material down on the job site, the more rich those work zone notifications are going to become. And we just simply feed it into whatever the state has existing. 511 feeds for sure, Waze feeds are another, and of course the work zone safety data exchange being kind of the collection point for a large majority of this information. And then when you leverage in the connected equipment or activity in our app confirming it, it's just going to make that information more robust for those drivers that are approaching that job site.
Brad, real quick, and I'll cap that off. So as obviously Jim's on this call, we've done the pilot project in Washington and a couple others, but Massachusetts will probably be the first state to actually put this on paper in writing for both the connected worker concept and the connected worker in speed automation. And obviously, as some of the folks spoke to, the goal is to automate it, not wait for it to manually occur. So if there is somebody on here that has an interest in becoming a pilot project partner, again, feel free to reach out to me, but it all starts with writing the specification.
All right. Thank you very much. Great answers to sometimes a tough question there, because like I said, every single state's a little different. This lends to one of my next questions that came about here. This is, as a subcontractor, how can we convince more general contractors or even more owners of jobs like state DOTs or whatever to use these solutions and technologies out there? And this one's I'm gonna start with Haley.
Yeah, thank you. My experience is primarily as a subcontractor, and what we have found is that in Oklahoma, our general contractors primarily do their own flagging. It's not something that they will subcontract just because of the nature of the time, the time sensitive nature of it. If you can imagine, how often the weather is going to change things, it's going to change when they need their flaggers. And so they tend to train and have their own flaggers on staff. And so this is something that I see as a really important space for general contractors to be looking at, them being some of their most vulnerable road users. And so in order for them to have this alerting, because it is live in traffic, maybe not as planned as other operations, it would be a very beneficial place to utilize the digital alerting, whether that be with any of these technologies that we've talked about today, but specifically the digital alerting technologies. And so I think for a contractor, it's again, it has to go back to, if it's not spec'd in, then it has to go back to what kind of environment and what kind of company they're running, and how safe they want their people to feel. And so for us as a culture, that has been also a retention strategy. There's not a whole lot of people that are just lining up to play in traffic for a living. And so we have to find ways to prove to them that their lives are important to us, and that we are investing in ways to make sure that they go home at night, and that by them taking the time and investing in making a career in this very important work, we are also then investing back into them. And so I think those are a couple of ways that conversation can be had. But as a business owner, I can also say that from an insurance and risk perspective, if you want to talk about insurance premiums, if any of you are not aware of what our market is like right now, it is not pretty. And so making those investments and differentiating yourself from others in the market who don't have these kind of investments being made, it's going to separate people eventually from an insurance premium perspective. So those are just a couple of my thoughts as a private sector.
So as a manufacturer of the AFADs, the automated flagging, kind of to Haley's point, the challenges that we see as a manufacturer in getting that written into projects is it needs to become its own pay item, and the pay item cannot be the same as the pay item for a flagger. So it needs to justify the expense. So then Haley in her position can justify the purchase CapEx of that equipment versus just using the flagging. So the pay item is the biggest point of interest as I hear. Literally, I just heard it yesterday from Caltrans, or I'm sorry, a couple of days ago. That's the biggest challenge that I've heard across the industry is ensuring it being a pay item and the appropriate financial pay.
Well, good. Thank you, Todd. And if I can go to Mark and Jim just a minute to the DOTs, and let's chat for a minute about how you and your peers within the DOTs, we're hearing that this is getting picked up more and more. What are you hearing from the other DOTs? What's happening with AASHTO? What is the kind of sentiments about embracing these new technologies? Are there some reservations about it? Is it viewed as just a big expense, or is it something that's really being warmly embraced? And has WZDX helped with that?
Yes, it's being embraced. It's been embraced. I think it's hard because like culturally, you have people that been with the states a long time, and sort of like some people just want to do what they've done in the past how many years. I think a lot of it comes down to like education of the new staff and understanding what's going on. People who are working it's important for me to have people that are working in the work zone give me feedback on what they want to see and try and apply those different things. We've been fortunate enough to partner with FHWA to get some grant money to partner with them, because look, we don't have private state DOT money to push a lot of these initiatives forward. So we rely on federal grants to help us. We'll put money in as well. We rely on those federal grants to kind of go after these types of things and pilot these different programs. It's absolutely essential that the federal grant money continues in this space. And I think when you're talking about digital construction, and it's all tied together, and it's absolutely essential for federal government to kind of help continue these grants.
So just to recap what you're saying, it's a little bit scary when the DOT and answering to their local public to pilot something that may or may not work, right? That's new. But if there's a grant that kind of helps underlie that risk, it can make it a whole lot more widely implementable. And I guess that's part of what a lot of the pilot programs that Federal Highway fosters around the country is to get this technology tested and make sure it's working. That's why some of the DOT.
Correct. And once you prove that this stuff works, and you can prove and you have showed data that this works, now you have to start building in budget lines in your state budget to kind of continue these programs. And that's where all of this really needs to start going, is each state kind of building that budget line in, continuing to partner with the federal government, add these different pieces onto federal contracts, and then you can start adding these pieces also on your state level contracts.
Hey, Jim, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, so again, I'm from the maintenance side of the house. It's a little bit different for me, but I'm fortunate I do get to work with Tony Langang. And I would just say between him and Steve Hopla, it was a pretty easy thing, as well as a lot from our construction office. We saw the importance. Obviously, the crash data tells the need, and then we started getting specifications written, refined and implemented into a lot of our projects. Most of our projects that are starting to run out now have this technology tied into it, whether it's a smart work zone or an intelligent work zone, whatever you want to call it. That's there. The speed cameras, Kyle Miller's with our ITS side of the house, He's our program manager for that. We're implementing that this year, using it around the state, not only in our construction work zones, but some of our maintenance work zones. And so it is pretty easy if you've got the right people in place, and there is some money. It's a little bit difficult. From my perspective, from the maintenance side, it's a lot more difficult than it is the construction side, because how do you prep the agency to purchase this information? And so budgets are a big deal when it comes to that conversation. How do you prep your fleet and all of the equipment that might be needed, and some personnel, what does that look like? That's the next big question. And we'll get there. Let's just make sure it's doable and it's showing an improvement. And even our maintenance teams, our MAP team a couple years ago tried this with basic handheld equipment, and people were stopping them in the stores going, "Hey, we just saw that you were notifying us. Thanks, it's nice." And they noticed a difference in safety, but it's a difficult one to measure too, and it'll take time to really tell that story.
Hey, Jim, are you or anybody else on the call familiar with the safety contingency funds? And has anybody exercised that successfully?
Yeah,
that's an option.
Yeah, I think that's one that the traffic side, Tony's team is working on right now. We're kind of just starting to look at it from the maintenance and operations side, but it's a small team from the maintenance side. There's just a handful of people kind of trying to keep our head above the water with the speed of how well industry is taking this and moving with it, which is fantastic. It's just, how do you get your hands or your head around it moving forward? There's a lot of information out there, but a great question, Todd. And I would probably let everyone else, if you're not aware of that information, look into it to maybe spur on your programs.
Yeah, I'll jump in here, Todd, because you're singing from my hymn book, right? And so for those folks that are not familiar with the Safety Contingency Fund, that was started again with the IIJA, and it allows the DOTs to set aside a pool of money, and it can be based on contract or across the board, however the state DOT wants to do it. And what that allows you to do is, if they're coming up on a project, or maybe as Jim has mentioned, I hadn't thought of that, a maintenance issue, and they need additional money that wasn't anticipated when the contract was let, or a new technology comes out that we're talking about today, they don't have to try to go through a change order system. If they've set up their safety contingency fund, they can just go right to that. And typically what it takes is if the contractor and the DOT both agree that the safety feature is needed and is reasonable, they can go right to that contingency fund and then quickly implement the new safety protocol. So it's a process that really, the concept started at Texas DOT probably 15, 20 years ago, and they have used it well there. Minnesota was piloting it. Again, we'd love to see that implemented across the state, as Todd has mentioned, just to be able to, it's a great source for getting this type of technology out there when there's maybe not dedicated funds or it wasn't anticipated at the time the contract was led. So thanks for bringing that up, Todd. Excellent.
Yeah, I'll jump in here too, Brad. And yeah, I'm really glad because there's an education piece here for everybody, for state DOTs, for contractors, for users, for workers, everybody. That you never know especially when it comes to safety technologies. There's probably funding out there you can go after, you just never knew about it. So there's an education piece here for everyone. And just to add on to education, on all your technologies that were presented today, I got a question about what is the learning curve on these new technologies that were presented today? And I'll start with Mr. Gallant, Michael.
Phenomenal question. I think the best way to talk about this is that generally HaulHub, the way we approach this stuff is we want to make sure that it is as scalable as possible and that the barrier of entry is as close to zero as possible too. With e-ticketing, majority of this information already resides at the plant anyway. They have a SQL database. We tie into it. We make sure that information flows to the construction job site, construction portal, and then we can make sure that it's broadcast if the state greenlights it. With the connected equipment piece, most of these construction OEMs already have telematics built into them. So we're just tapping into it from a data pipeline that we've created with the existing relationships we have with Caterpillar, Deere, Wirtgen, Gameco, et cetera, and making sure that we can ingest those data fields. So that way, when they are turned on, then it's fed to the necessary navigation systems to be able to broadcast those worker presence notifications we talked about earlier. There is nothing more that the contractor has to do to be able to do this other than say, yes, we want to participate in this project. And the same thing for e-ticketing. It's very, very easy and very intuitive once they're feeding that information to be able to get this up and running and protect their crews.
All right, Mark, I want to pick it to you next on that same question. What kind of learning curves are we dealing with the technology you discussed?
It's kind of, I'm going to say minimal. We create like a little mini section in our department, and that section's responsibility is just to go from job to job, north and south end of the state, and just kind of train our staff if they have questions. Again, I did not want any more responsibility on our field staff than what they already have. I wanted all this to work in the background, and that's kind of the way it's set up, and that's the way we've been delivering it. So we've had really a minimal learning curve for our staff. They're aware of what's there. If they want to dive into it, they can. The more they dive in, the more they learn, the more opportunities we can get out of it. So I'm going to say it's minimal on our side.
All right, and then Tom pose the same question to you, and then anybody else that wants to jump in after Tom.
Yeah, the learning curve is zero. The great thing about HAAS Alert and utilizing our safety cloud is you do not have to teach anybody to do anything different. They literally do their jobs, and they are made safer. The only action that you will have to take is if it's through our digital alerting transponder, which is connected to power, ground, and then to flashing lights, which is what we recommend. When your employee does their job, so think Haley's crews, when they're out there, let's say they're in the striper, the moment they hit those lights, safety cloud comes alive and is protecting them while they're moving, while they're stopped. She nor anyone had to teach them to do anything different other than I'm investing in something that's going to make you safer today. And it's the same thing whether you're utilizing, right, your current existing telematics, right, Samsara, Motive, Geotab, Webfleet, Cradlepoint, anything like that. There's zero learning. You don't have to teach anybody anything different. I will say, Haley mentioned the utilization of our lane closures. That's probably a 10-minute training on how to use our safety cloud dashboard and then where you can delineate where those changes are. But often we'll find in working with many contractors that they use connected arrow boards, like such as, Vermac or Wonko or SolarTech. And so safety cloud powers the alerting from those connected arrow boards. So if you go and deploy, you'll know with great confidence that we're automatically safety cloud will automatically deliver those messages within 3 feet, 100% accuracy, that board is deployed and that there is a lane blocked and people can start moving left and right, upstream and slowing down and moving over. So we pride ourselves on keeping it super simple, right? That's the KISS acronym we use. Much different when I was in the Marine Corps, completely different acronym from when I was in the Marine Corps, but it has to be super simple. And people literally just need to do their jobs and be protected and safer than ever before. And that's what we pride on. Zero learning curve. Just do your job and you're made safer.
Well, hey, there's a lot of good questions in the chat. We'll capture them and share them with our crew here. But before we wrap up here and turn the time over to Travis to kind of wrap up, because he, with the laborers, really represents the workers that are out there every day, really in harm's way. And I want to give him some time to make a statement. But I would just like each of our presenters to take just a minute and kind of give us your final thoughts on this. And I'd really like it more towards how do we get this out there more widely? But, what are your final thoughts here? And let's just go in reverse order of where we started. So I got to get back up here to my notes here. Let's start with Mark. Final thoughts here.
I think there's a lot of great technology out there. State DOTs, we need private sector. We need to partner with private sector in order to advance our industry. And I appreciate ARTBA putting this on to kind of put the word out there. And just, I ask all state DOTs jump on board, talk to the private industry.
Thank you. And Mike.
Great question. Outside of the 4 states that are participating in this grant with the connected equipment, it's actually kind of spread word of mouth. Everyone knows each other. Everyone has a friend in some other state, be it a contractor or a DOT inspector, staff, or whoever. And due to the, leading with safety, we're seeing an abundance of contractors reach out to us and ask what the status is with their DOT on this effort. So it's kind of a crowdsourced approach to it. And one contractor specifically, I won't name who they are or where they are, they're knocking on their door of their DOT effectively daily saying, why aren't we doing this here? Obviously, there's a funding component to it naturally that the DOT would have to incur, but they see the value because we're leading with safety. They see the benefit because they know that their crews are going to be protected by connecting their construction equipment to our construction portal. And the same thing with e-ticketing. And, you know, it's kind of what Tom has been saying. We want to make sure everyone can go home safe at the end of the day. And leveraging all of these technologies together in concert with one another, just a robust data source that we can then feed to the traveling public.
Thank you so much. Jim, final thought.
Yeah, sorry about that. My mouse is going crazy. Yeah, I would say the big one is just
Yep.
not only word of mouth, but just continue to tell the good stories that are coming from it. And we started pretty quiet and slowly raised awareness and kept hearing what other states were doing, and used them as a kind of a springboard to continue the discussion. With our state, we're a little bit different, and I don't want to. It's a little different in the sense that we're just a cabinet agency. We have to listen, or we're funded by our legislators. So, if that's kind of your state, I would not hesitate to work with your legislators and continue to train them up. They're turning over pretty fast, just like anybody else. They're not experts, and they need to hear the benefits of this type of technology and how it can change their state in a positive way.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Todd.
So a couple things on a final thought. Brad, Jessica, thank you. Obviously, there's a lot that goes into this. Looks like we had maybe maxed out around 348 participants. So first and foremost, having a vast network and a team that wants to do this is crucial. I really like the comment about crowdsourcing on our side of the fence, right? Because that's really what it is. But I literally had a conversation with my colleague Todd Foster earlier today about MUTCD and being willing to make changes to what's been done historically. And I gave the example Major League Baseball. It's one of the oldest favorite pastimes. Every year, due to technology coming out, they're making changes to their rules and regs. So don't be afraid to step out and try new things. And my contact link is in the chat, and that's about as simple as it is.
Thank you so much, Todd. All right, Haley.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think I would not only echo everyone, but just Jim, you really hit on a good point, which is just educating. And whether it would be your legislators or those in the DOTs, and obviously I'm speaking from my perspective as somebody in the private sector, but also just in your working groups, whether it be with general contractors associations or your other safety associations that you're a part of, is we have to just be having this conversation all the time about what is working, because we know what doesn't work, and we know that the depths are too high. And so we have a lot of really great things right here in our hands that are proven. And it really does take, as somebody who has been worked with my own DOT in Oklahoma for many, many years, that group of people changes very often as well, right? And so we have a lot younger of a workforce coming in, at least in Oklahoma, as far as the Department of Transportation goes. And so we need to be educating one another and really singing the praises of how much these things are working. And I think that will really take us far, and can do a lot of the legwork for us. And then again, my encouragement to those here that are representative of departments of transportation is, please take the information that you have, or maybe just something that you have heard about, and go to your private sector partners and talk to them about it, and ask them to do some digging, ask them to do some testing, and start having those conversations. And I really believe that until we get away from the age-old like us versus them, and we really create partnerships between private and public sectors, then we won't be able to make the distance here on towards zero deaths. And so that's just my encouragement, is just come alongside one another and create partnerships and talk about the good things.
Thank you so much, Haley. Okay, Tom.
Wow, how do I follow that up? Because Haley said it best. It's togetherness. It's everybody working together is going to solve this problem. Look, people are dying. Make no mistake about it. And if we don't start taking action, you've heard Vision Zero, you've heard safe systems approach. I mean, we've been talking about this for decades, but the problem persists, and often, right, it continues to get worse and worse. So there are proven technologies, there are proven roadside tools, there are proven training. ARTBA does an amazing job, CPWR, NORA, right? AGC, ATSA. I mean, there's so many of these great agencies that are out there, but we have to execute, right? We have to get away from this traditional thinking that saving lives is expensive. It is not expensive to save lives. Everybody here that presented today has a very inexpensive solution that literally saves lives. And if we start working together, coming together, and using everything together, we will absolutely achieve as close to Vision Zero as we can possibly get. And that's more people going home safer to their families every day. And I would leave you with, isn't that the world we want to live in? So let's think differently and start taking action, because we can get everyone home safer to their families. So thank you again for giving me an opportunity to chat with the rest of the team. Thank you all panelists.
Travis, bring us home.
Yeah, I'm going to take a point of privilege here and offer a little bit from the worker perspective. A lot of this might already be in your minds, or hopefully some of it came out of the discussion. A couple things, just a couple from the workers as a worker advocate. Whatever the technology is, and we had some great ones here today, it must be intuitive. It must be simple to use, easy to understand. And also it must be comfortable for the workers to use. It can't be cumbersome. It can't add a burden to them. So those are two of the major things for worker buy-in. It also should be the least disruptive as possible. It's funny because sometimes you call these disruptive technologies, but at the same time, any kind of technology should disrupt the flow as little as possible, shouldn't interrupt the daily routines as much. And then we also need to emphasize to the workers how the tech directly enhances their personal safety. I know everybody on the phone or on the call webinar does that when they go out there, but we can't lose sight of what we're doing out there, and it has to be real. Another point out there from the workers' perspective is we should always test it. We should always let the workers touch it, feel it, projects go from project to project, and get the feedback from the workers, get them involved right from the front, and also get their supervisors involved, get labor involved, whoever you can get to give you input and feedback. And then take that to heart and then react to it. Don't just ignore it. And then I think one of the last two things I want to mention about worker buy-in is, obviously we talked about training. As simple as a product can be, you always need to have that training aspect because you are changing the way people work. So anytime you change anything on a job site, you need to do that training. You can't just give written instructions. You got to let them, like I said earlier, touch it, feel it, hold it. Show them how it works, talk to them about it, answer their questions and concerns about it. You can't just give them a product and have written instructions and expect them to use it. So training is very important for any of these new products as they exist. And then the last thing, and probably the most important thing from my perspective for worker buy-in, is building that trust between the worker, the employer, the state DOT, everyone. As somebody earlier said at the end here, we're all in this boat together. Everybody has to work together. So be transparent about why this data is collected. One of the biggest misconceptions workers have out there is this is collecting their movements. This is going to be used punitively against them. I'll tell you, any product, doesn't matter how good it is, if it's going to be used punitively against workers, it's not going to happen. They're not going to buy in. So reinforce the goal of this is safety and not surveillance or discipline against them. And again, I said it earlier, always involve the workers in the process as soon as you can. All the way from the frontline worker all the way up to the supervisor, and really listen to what they have to say. And with that, I'll do a little summary, I think, of what I saw today to kind of close this down. What's some great information? We saw 3 very, very good technologies out there, new technologies out there that are being deployed. We also had some good users and some real life examples. We talked about the work zone data exchange. That was the abbreviation WZDX was brought up earlier. We talked about technologies such as Waze and Google Maps and crowdsourcing and how we're using those technologies to improve worker safety on the job. I heard a lot about speed reduction and reducing distraction. Those are two of the things every time there's an incident out there, no matter what caused that crash, whether it was the traveling public or somebody on our side, the worker side, there's always a speed factor. And I know distracted driving is on the rise, so we've got to do whatever we can. A lot of these products are trying to acknowledge that and design it out or help prevent that. We talked about real live data and how data needs to be real and real time. I think that was really important. And one thing that I don't think came through, at least to me, that we always talk about when we talk about work zone safety is it did a little bit, but we're talking about work zone safety a lot in the workers, but we're also protecting the traveling public. You may or may not know this. When there's an incident on a job site in a work zone, 8 or 9 times out of that 10, it's the actual driver of the car who falls fatal and not necessarily the worker. The workers do 1 or 2 out of 10. So we're protecting both sides of that work zone, whether it's the traveling public or our workers out there. We talked a lot about connected and smart work zones. They're on the rise, and that's really good to see with us all 3 of these technologies. And then I'll just bring us home by saying I think we need to just keep capitalizing on all this data, all this great data, all the work, and all this technology to improve our work zones out there. And thank you very much for everyone's time.
Thank you all. And yeah, while you're clapping, a big clap for CPWR. We didn't see them as much here, but they are making things happen across the board and just great work, and best wishes to them with all the changes happening at NIOSH. And so best wishes CPWR and the great work that they do. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, presenters, for everything that you have shared with us. Again, for those of us who've been doing this for many years, it's a little bit like Christmas that we're actually seeing the gifts delivered that we have been so anticipating for so many years. Let's just get them out there and make it work, because we know that it does work. So thank you again for being here. And the recording will be available through CPWR of this presentation. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Brad. Thanks, everyone.